Like any secret intelligence service in the world, Mossad has bureaucrats, careerists, and even, yes, don't be surprised, quite dim-witted individuals. But there is one significant difference. All officials in this service know that even a minor failure in their activities, a mistake in planning and analysis, can lead to fatal consequences for their beloved homeland, even to the point of the disappearance of the State of Israel, a country whose land is abundantly soaked with the blood and sweat of members of Haganah, IDF, and ordinary Israelis. Nowhere else in the world, except perhaps in the USA, which represents, in the words of one American president, a great melting pot of nations, will Israelis feel at home, calm and confident, not catching hostile glances, and not hearing possible serpentine hisses of dissatisfaction behind their backs for speaking Hebrew. And there will be no more Israelis, only Jews, people without a homeland, as it was for 2,000 years. There will be no earthly corner where the last stone on the roadside of the Tel Aviv-Haifa highway will be part of what they call home. 100 years ago, old Jews, feeling the approach of death, would come to Jerusalem, settle in hotels or infirmaries near the Temple Mount, so that as soon as the soul leaves the frail body, they would be buried in the local cemetery, here in the homeland where they had never been before in their lives. Can this happen again? Everyone knows and remembers this, from the almighty head of the department to the regular cleaning lady dusting the windowsill. They oppose the fanaticism of Islamist religious fanatics with their own fanaticism. A fanatical belief that each of them, standing in the ranks of fighters, is protecting the lawn in front of their mother's house, the squealing daughter, soaring above a trampoline on Purim Day. Mossad's planning of operations pays maximum attention to detail. If an agent poses as the owner of an import-export company dealing with timber and lumber, he will know all the intricacies of the trade. He will be able to converse with colleagues in the field so convincingly that they will never suspect he knew nothing about lumber or the accompanying documents for a batch of Canadian spruce 3 months ago. Every Israeli agent will achieve the set goal by any means necessary. Otherwise, it is impossible to counter those who may have already planned countless disasters for his homeland. A homeland that represents such a vulnerable strip of land on the eastern shore of the Mediterranean Sea, which can be crossed in an hour and a half by car. And on this strip is the family home. Let's consider the above by looking at the example of Operation Wrath of God, carried out after and because of the capture and death of Israeli athletes in Munich during the 1972 Olympics by Arab terrorists. Here, it is essential to highlight the role of the then Prime Minister of Israel, Golda Meir, with her firm management style and uncompromising decisions differing from most politicians of that time. She could use strong language when necessary. Her phrase, which initiated the retribution operation, is noteworthy: "Send the boys," which became famous worldwide. At the time of this phrase, all of Israel felt deceived and insulted. The Germans refused Golda Meir's initial request for the Israeli Special Forces to storm the hotel where the terrorists held the athletes, deciding to do it themselves, despite not having a special assault unit. The result was a bloody massacre. The Germans refused a second time, not handing over the 3 surviving Arabs from the botched assault to the Israelis, but releasing them immediately when Black September hijacked a Lufthansa plane. Golda Meir, upon learning of this, said, "Schnotty brats," and lit her 5th cigarette in the last hour. She did not negotiate with terrorists at all. The 3 scoundrels were greeted in Libya by a crowd of 30,000. Led by Muammar Gaddafi as heroes. In all the cafes of Haifa and Tel Aviv, there were talks of revenge. Gray-haired professors at the Jerusalem University said the same. Jeway must avenge. They compiled a list of 13 terrorists. They had to die, be demonstrably executed. Otherwise, such acts would be repeated over and over again. But the assassination team was instructed: no collateral casualties. So, the hunt for terrorists, which later became legend, began. On October 16th in Rome, a richly dressed Arab sat in a restaurant for a long time. Grabbing a bottle of wine, he headed home. In the entrance, 2 men asked his name, listened, nodded in response, and shot him 14 times. His name was Abu Zuwaiter, an employee of the Lebanese embassy, who had supplied weapons to the Munich terrorists. In December of the same year in Paris, a remotely controlled explosive device was installed in Mahmoud al-Hamshari's home. Posing as French journalists, they arranged a meeting, waited for his wife and child to leave for a walk, called, "Monsieur al-Hamshari, this is me." The explosion blew off half the terrorist's head. Europe was filled with rumors. Someone was ruthlessly killing Arabs from Black September, but not everyone was afraid. 3 militants felt cozy in Lebanon. Colonel Ehud Barak came for them with special forces. They arrived by sea, disguised in civilian clothes. The Arab guards didn't even have time to draw their weapons. The assault on the building began. At this time, a man called Beirut Police, speaking in perfect Arabic, and said, "Palestinians not far from the beach have internal disputes. No need to rush there. They are armed and dangerous." The police arrived an hour later when the special forces were already at sea, heading back to Israel on boats. The terrorists and their guards were shot. Now, Cyprus. Hussein Abd al-Shir led the Cyprus cell of the terrorist organization. The hunters approached the task thoroughly. They mined the bed so that when the target sat down, there would be an explosion. Then they doubted, what if he was alone? They set up an explosive with a remote detonation. One agent checked to ensure Abd al-Shir was alone. The explosion scattered the Palestinian apartment. The 6th, Basil al-Kubaisi, was shot without a word on a crowded Paris street. The next, Muhassasi, was targeted with 8 oxygen-burning bombs in an Athens hotel. A failure, and one agent, breaking the door, threw a grenade. Job done. The 8th was Mohammed Boudia, who was very afraid of car bombs. He always inspected his car before getting in. One day, after carefully checking the car, he opened the door to go about his business. A bomb turned the car into a blazing torch. The terrorists, recently flaunting themselves before Western journalists, turned into hunted rats. They scattered to the darkest, farthest corners of the world, seeking salvation. Then a tragic mistake happened. A new assassination team sent for replacement in Lillehammer killed a Moroccan waiter, Ahmed Bouchiki, mistaking him for a terrorist leader, Ali Hassan Salameh, in front of his pregnant wife in quiet provincial Norway. There was a grand scandal. Salameh eventually got his due. He was blown up in Beirut in 1979. Unfortunately, this incident also killed innocent bystanders and injured many. 2 more participants in the Munich massacre were killed later in Qatar and Lebanon. This last act of revenge occurred in 1991. Only 2 escaped death at the hands of the Israelis. The organizer Abu Daoud, who was shot 5 times in Warsaw and bleeding, still managed to chase after the shooter. Polish doctors saved him, and he died naturally in a Damascus hospital at the age of 73. And Jamal al-Gashey, who still hides in an African country, surely haunted by nightmares of Israeli agents. Let's draw conclusions. Mossad can indeed be called the sword of vengeance for the Jewish state, and this organization has mastered the art of killing and intimidating opponents. Those who enter into conflict with Israel know their chances of survival are minimal. I am sure we and our descendants will hear more about their secret operations in the news columns of well-known tabloids.